How are you doing? We're Tom and Regina, and we're stepping into history at Cedar Springs ARP Church. This is the community of Cedar Springs, and we're in Greenwood County, but we're really close to Abbeville County. It's 100 feet from here. And actually, at one time, the county of Greenwood was part of Abbeville County. And when this church was built, even though it's in Greenwood County now, this was Abbeville County. And this church was built, and this particular church was built in
1853, and it is now on the National Register of Historic Places.
And when was the first church built?
First church was built 1779.
Sounds right to me. So let's go explore and see what we can learn today.
If you visit a southern graveyard, this marker is very typical across cemeteries in the South. This marker signifies this is a grave of a Confederate veteran. The United Daughters of the Confederacy, shortly after the war, began giving crosses of honors to soldiers who had served valiantly. After they died, they began marking their graves with these crosses of honor, and they continue to do so today, trying to mark every grave to keep a record of where every Confederate veteran is buried.
As Regina mentioned, the iron crosses are placed at the headstones of Confederate veterans. And this is the headstone of Thomas Bradley. He was killed during the Civil War at Ball's Bluff, Virginia. And one thing I learned in researching this cemetery, and it was just an obscure fact, but it just really hit home with me. Over half the male population of Abbeville County died during the Civil War. They died in the war fighting. Think about that for a minute. I mean, just seriously, just half the male population died between 1861 and 1865. That's something. And there are a lot of iron crosses in this cemetery.
I'm standing at the grave of Patrick Bradley, who the town of Bradley is named after. He was one of the early settlers here. He served as a captain in Company C, 7th South Carolina, and he was also the originator and president of the Augusta and Knoxville Railroad.
The church was started by Reverend Thomas Clark. He was a leader in the Associate Reformed Presbyterian movement, and he was born in Scotland in 1720. He migrated to the United States, in particular to the South, with so many of the Scotch-Irish. And he passed away in 1792, and he is actually buried here. And he was the minister for two churches close by. This church, Cedar Springs, and Lower Lone Cane, which is just a few miles from here.
There seems to be so many important graves out here of townspeople from Bradley. And right here we're standing at the grave of Joseph Lowry. His mother was a Presley, which is another big name. Fraser Presley House is located just right down the road. But Mr. Lowry here was a surgeon during the war between the states. He served under several brigades as the surgeon, went on to become the surgeon major for the 27th South Carolina Regiment, and he was paroled in Greensboro, North Carolina in May of 1865.
It's amazing at how many prominent people from this area, how many family names you see here that define this area. I see a lot of Tucks. That's a very prominent family here on Cedar Springs Road, and the Bradleys, which we discussed,
Frasers,
Presley's, just Watsons. There's just so many families here that any of you familiar with this area, you would recognize those names. And these names go back to, the settling of this area, literally. This was the first church of this area. I mean, there are so many names and graves here to explore that, we can't explore them all. But it is a gorgeous place.
It's a pretty amazing place. It's a peaceful place. It's a little dilapidated, which future video will discuss cleaning graves, to give people an idea of what that entails. I'm just in awe of all the old graves that are in that direction. And as we come on down, there's newer graves, but there's still older graves. So this is generations and generations of families who attended this church and lived in this area.
And this church still holds services.
Yes.
I've actually attended service in this church before. I was fortunate enough to live just a few miles from here on Cedar Springs Road when I was young. And the acoustics in the church were just amazing. There's no sound system in there. But when it was built, there weren't sound systems. So they thought a lot more about things like that then.
And you can see the modern, I guess, luxuries they've added. I see the air conditioning system over there.
Yes. Which there would have been a really good natural draft to the church because they didn't have air conditioning when this was designed and built. They built them to create a draft, to make them cooler. But this is a beautiful place. And you mentioned dilapidated. It's actually extremely well taken care of. The groundskeeper here, I mean, he's doing an amazing job. So, But
when I say dilapidated, I don't mean the whole cemetery is not taken care of. There's just several older graves that are broken and aged, and it's hard to read them. We went on an adventure to try to find the grave of Reverend Thomas Clark, and we can't read them.
It was very difficult, but a lot of these tombstones, they're 200 years old, and a lot of them are broken. They're worn down with time.
My mom made the comment to me when we started this channel, well, what are y'all gonna do, just go to cemeteries all the time? But I think you learn so much from a cemetery. The different people buried there, their accomplishments are listed on the graves. I mean, I've been to cemeteries. I'm originally from Augusta, and there's a cemetery there with the grave of Joseph Lamar, who served as Supreme Court Justice under William Taft. Woodrow Wilson. I had no idea where he was buried there until just walking through there one day. I found it.
And you mentioned something then that made me really think. These people built something.
Correct.
I mean, literally, they built something out of nothing. There was nothing here when the first settlers arrived.
Correct.
And over time, there's subsequent generations built things. And I just think it's really sad today when we see so many trying to destroy things.
And the Bible tells us in the book of Joshua, when they had come into the Holy Land and they set out the 12 stones, God told them, build a monument. And the reason God told them to build the monument, so was that monument would be there to tell their children what happened there. And that's why places like this and monuments are so important, so future generations can understand what happened here.
The good and the bad.
Good and the bad.
All of it. And these people weren't perfect, but they did build something. And their generations after them built upon what they started. And there's actual, a thing of beauty here versus so many today just wanting to destroy. And I guess that's what bothers me with so much that I see today. It isn't that people won't change, it's I don't see anybody that wants to build anything. I see destruction. And places like this, we don't get them back. Once they're gone, they're gone. These tombstones, the people buried there, they're long gone, their bodies. But these tombstones, you know, that's all that's left of so many people. And we should cherish this. We should take care of this for our future generations.
This is their legacies.
Yes.
This town is their legacy. What their tombstone says they did. This gentleman here, he was in the U.S. Army and served in Korea. This is his legacy.
Yes. This is after a life of doing who knows what, good and bad, just a human. This is what we have left to remember him by. And we should honor that.
One of the things that always fascinates me about cemeteries is the different people buried in them and how they lived their lives. Most gravestones have a birth date and a death date. And although that's significant, what's more significant is there's a little life lesson here for you. It's how you live in between the birth date and the death date and the difference you try to make in the world.
This started off with settlers, and then it grew into, this was a plantation community.
Yes.
The Fraser Presley House, it's literally just down the street. And then Civil War, the Great Depression, the industrialization and modernization. This community has seen it all. And at the very beginning, the church was the heart of this community. Well, over literally the centuries, the community's almost faded away here with all the changes, as so many rural communities have. But the church is still here. It's still the heart of this community. So I think that says a lot about the power of faith versus all our material possessions and so forth and the things we value now. 200 plus years later, the church is still here. That amazes me.
Well, folks, I hope you learned and enjoyed this little step into history with us at Cedar Springs ARP Church. And if you like these videos, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and
God bless and have a good day.